How we looking? Hello friends, welcome back to another video on the Will's Health YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking everything about leaky gut. You may have heard this term before, you might be a beginner, you might already know a little bit about it, but hopefully by the time you finish this video, which will be 20 or so minutes long, you will know everything you need to know about what leaky gut is, so you can stop going down all the rabbit holes and getting yourself confused. First of all, if you're wondering who I am, my name is Will, as you would have guessed from the channel name. I am a private researcher and also a gut health coach based out in London, who I had many issues with gut health issues, IBS, etc. If you haven't seen my photos, please go look at it. I was a state back then. I've been able to drag myself out of hell. Now I help other people do the exact same. But I have to say I'm not a medical professional, so this is for educational use only. If you do have any real concerns or do decide to make any changes to your lifestyle, diet, etc., please consult with your physician first and get proper medical advice before you do anything. Okay, but without further ado, let's get straight into it. I've got my notes here for you guys. So what leaky gut actually is an increased permeability in the cells in your intestinal wall. Okay, we're going to talk about the layers of your intestinal wall, but you have a 1 cell thick intestinal wall, right? And in between those cells, you have tight junctions. And when those tight junctions become, I suppose, too permeable, and we're going to talk about how that might happen, then certain proteins, certain food antigens, certain toxins, microbiome fragments will then go into the bloodstream, which can cause a whole host of issues, okay? So essentially that's why it gets the name leaky gut, because it's leaking certain things into the bloodstream that it shouldn't, okay? Now, one of the proteins that can kind of govern these tight junctions is something called zonulin. Now, you may have heard of zonulin before, okay? If you haven't, that's obviously fine. If you do like a GI map or certain other tests, you can get zonulin tested and they can see where that's at. But essentially, it is a protein that regulates your tight junctions. And it's a signaling protein that can kind of tell the tight junction, the panels, when to open. And therefore, if this zonulin is upregulated, then sometimes that can hint at a problem with your gut lining. So if your zonulin tends to be at a lower level, then the gates are being properly closed. If the zonulin is upregulated and too high, then again, the gates might be too wide and therefore leaky. And zonulin isn't proof of disease, but it definitely does give us hints if someone is dealing with leaky gut. And ideally, you would want to get it tested multiple times, because zonulin would really have to be elevated ongoing. One high result may not tell the full story. It needs to be consistently elevated. But if I see someone with high zonulin, I'm going to somewhat assume that they are dealing with leaky gut, which again, most people are. But when you are dealing with leaky gut, as I mentioned before, certain toxins like LPS, which is lipopolysaccharides, food antigens and microbiome fragments, things that just naturally are moving through your gut anyway, are going to enter into your blood, right? And this is going to create a immune response, because your body is treating this as a foreign product. So then it might start producing antibodies and might freak out a little bit. And then this turns a gut issue into a systemic issue. And that's why often with gut issues, we then start to get brain fog, we get histamine issues, we get fatigued. It's also linked with celiac disease, many autoimmune conditions, type 1 diabetes, asthma. A lot of things stem from the gut, and specifically leaky gut. This is why it's so important to deal with leaky gut. Now, it's also really important to understand that leaky gut isn't a root cause. I know everyone's looking for their root cause, but leaky gut tends to be just a symptom. And I want to talk about some of the root causes. And when you do have gut issues, things tend to come in packages. It's not a case of you just have one thing and that's the case. You might have a little bit of SIBO, a little bit of candida, a little bit of leaky gut. Things tend to come together most of the time. So we obviously need to address that. Now, if you're familiar with my content and my YouTube and my system, I always talk about doing things again in a system, because you need to cover all areas. It's not usually just enough to focus on one area. We need to address everything systematically. Now, some of the root causes of why you might get leaky gut. First one being dysbiosis. Dysbiosis is an imbalance of gut bacteria. Now, there's actually 3 types of dysbiosis. In my head, I call it type 1, type 2, type 3. Type 1 is a lack of beneficial bacteria, right? Type 2 is a lack of diversity, so diverse bacteria in the gut microbiome. And the third one is a pathogenic overgrowth, which are things like Candida, H. pylori, E. coli, which can cause some issues. Now, the first two are very common if you have antibiotics, because it tends to cause some collateral damage, therefore removing a lot of your beneficial and diversity, and that actually can lead to a pathogenic overgrowth as well. The reason that this might also cause leaky gut again, this is a whole, I mean, even science can't even explain the full depth of understanding of, your gut microbiome, but we can at least start to speculate. But one reason why this might occur is we produce things called gut microbiome metabolites. And certain fibers, so your gut microbiome will ferment certain fibers and certain food and produce microbiome metabolites. And this can both be positive and negative. An example of a positive microbiome metabolite is butyrate, right? And butyrate is the fuel that your colonic cells need. So if it's not fermenting the fibers correctly because you have dysbiosis, then you're not producing enough of a short chain fatty acid called butyrate, and that can also then lead to leaky gut as well. It can also produce negative microbiome metabolites. If you have things like E. coli, for example, they tend to release and are, encased in LPS, which is a toxin, lipopolysaccharides. And that can be an issue because that can damage the gut lining, right? And then it further damages the gut lining. Then the toxins then get into your bloodstream because your gut lining is leaky. And again, that's going to contribute to a lot of systemic inflammation, many issues. And a lot of people ask me, well, how are my skin issues connected to how's my brain fog, how's my fatigue? If you have an issue of your gut, expect things to pop up all over your body to cause you issues, even things like arthritis as well. Okay. This is why fiber is a double-edged sword and is typically only therapeutic when you have a healthy gut microbiome, right? Which is sometimes why we use a low FODMAP diet. If we have a lot of fiber, when we have dysbiosis, that might cause us some issues, which is why a lot of people, they think all gut health is just fiber. So they're going to have more fiber when they have a poor gut, and things might actually get worse. Okay. And there's certain fibers that might be better for individuals, like PHGG, that you can do when you're sensitive. Obviously, that's a whole nother topic. So you would have to balance the gut microbiome if you want to long-term heal leaky gut. Of course, we're going to talk about how we can directly heal leaky gut, but I just want to make you understand that there's a lot behind it as well. In addition, we've got things like infections, right? Post-infectious IBS, even things like COVID. There's studies to show that it can irritate the gut lining and potentially cause some damage and increase permeability as well. Okay. Things like NSAIDs, so ibuprofen, right? I think Tylenol is the American version, is proven to give gut irritation. Long-term use of this can definitely be an issue. Alcohol as well is no surprise. Alcohol can definitely damage the mucosal layer of your stomach, which is going to contribute to leaky gut. Diet is obviously huge. I mean, if you're having the standard Western diet, there's going to be a chance that you're dealing with leaky gut. And leaky gut, the cells in your leaky gut often repair, and they have a quick life cycle. And oftentimes we can outrun a bad diet for only so long, but there often becomes a point called the body burden point where things just start to fall apart. Maybe you've been eating McDonald's every single day, obviously an extreme example, for years, and you were like, fine, but then one day you just clicked and you start to fall apart. It's because your body's been trying to keep up for so long and it's finally just not been able to do so. So diet, obviously being aware of the main irritants, gluten, things like that. And of course, a lot of our diet is sprayed with glyphosate. Glyphosate is a big killer when it comes to leaky gut. If you're not aware of what this is, it's essentially the compound found in herbicides and pesticides, which are sprayed on your food, which is why it's so important to get organic produce where you can, and also to wash your fruits with baking soda and potentially apple cider vinegar if you do buy not organic fruit. Okay, sleep and stress, these are foundational. Okay, these are just boring things that you just have to keep upkeep if you want to be healthy in general. And then also poor upstream digestion, right? So if your stomach acid, your enzymes, and your bile flow are not working correctly and actually initially breaking down your food in the second part of digestion, which is your stomach, then obviously the lack of breakdown of the food particles can irritate your gut lining, and that can be an issue in itself as well. And the dangerous thing about leaky gut is, let's say that you get an infection and that's causing some inflammation, right? Inflammation, things like TNF alpha and LFN GABA. Okay, this then causes damage to your gut lining. But you can see how there's a vicious cycle, because when you have inflammation, that's going to cause irritation to your gut lining and cause leaky gut. And when you have leaky gut, that's going to cause more systemic inflammation. So you get caught up in this cycle, and that's when people can get really ill, which is what we see in today's world, in my opinion. So in order to heal from leaky gut, you have to remove the triggers, you have to repair the barrier, and you also have to recondition your gut microbiome, improve your lifestyle, things like that. Okay, so there's a few elements to it. Okay, hopefully you understand what leaky gut is now. Okay, When we talk about leaky gut, there are layers to your gut. The first layer to your gut is the mucosal layer, okay, which you have a mucosal layer from your throat all the way down to your colon, okay? This is like a slime coating, and again, lines your whole GI tract, right? Now, again, if you need any help with this at all, you are confused, overwhelmed, or have no idea where to start, then you can book a free discovery call in my bio, which is the top link in the description. And essentially in that free discovery call, we will break down your situation. If I feel as though I can help you based off past experience and my current knowledge, then yes, we can offer you some coaching. If not, I'll try to push you in the right direction either way. But the first step and the first actionable step is free. So you might as well take it. And either way, you tend to come away from that call learning something, or at least a little bit of clarity, even if we don't work together, okay? My Instagram will also be in the bio as well if you would like to DM me. And please feel free to watch the many other YouTube videos that are on this channel to learn more about gut health and my experience with gut health, and how I choose to treat it with my system. Again, I'm not a medical professional. I never claim to be. This is all through my own private research and the success that I see from myself, my own story, and the clients that I do work with who have had some amazing results after they have been failed by the traditional healthcare system, unfortunately. So when you have this first layer of this mucus layer, which starts to thin and break down based off your food and your diet and your gut microbiome, and also you start to get these tight junctions that open because it's irritating and the gluten and whatnot are poking holes essentially in your gut lining, then your immune system is also going to really struggle as well, because most of your immune system and underneath those epithelial cells sits the immune system, where about 70% of all your immune cells live. So if you're someone that gets ill all the time, well, there's no surprise because you have gut issues, and that's obviously affecting your immune system, okay? But the issue is when the mucosal layer breaks down and then you get leaky gut, then you start to expose food and toxins to your immune system, and your immune system becomes overburdened. It's struggling with so much, and you wonder why you're not feeling your best and why you feel ill all the time, because your immune system is constantly working on overdrive, okay? And it's all well and good knowing that, but now we want to understand how can we actually treat this, which is the most important thing. And of course, as we spoke about before, we need to stop the irritation of the gut lining and also give it the raw materials that it needs to heal, okay? Because these layers protect you from the world. You can have toxins and we're exposed to so many toxins, and it's why it's so important to take things like binders. But if your gut lining starts to break down, it can no longer protect you, and it now exposes you to all these toxins and dangerous foods to your whole body, and these walls can no longer protect you from the world, which is why it's so important in order to have resilience in your overall health to deal with leaky gut and make sure your gut lining is supported, okay? Now, we're going to talk about some things that we can implement to address leaky gut. As I said from the beginning of the video, this is educational use only. Only implement this if you have the all clear, I should say, from your doctor and physician. Okay. So we need to reduce the irritants and also focus on the root causes. But for the actual raw materials, what we want to use is, as I spoke about before, that mucosal layer, that first line of defense that we want to replenish. There's two things that we can use. There's slippery elm, which is, in my opinion, one of the best herbs in the world for your gut health, and it naturally contains mucilage content, which almost imitates this mucosal layer. It's amazing how nature works, and that will coat and soothe and coat the gut lining. It will help reduce irritation, and it's great for beginners to start using. Now, of course, with all these, supplements and products, the branding and the dosing is going to make or break your situation. I mean, I've had people who they said, slippery elm doesn't work, but they've got an awful brand with such a low dose that it's not really going to do anything for them. So you need to be aware of that as well. The next thing alongside that is aloe vera. Okay, I actually have some aloe vera in this fridge right now that I can probably get for you. Now, aloe vera juice, you want fresh, organic, from the inner leaf. This also can help the mucosal layer of your stomach. Fushi is a pretty good brand, so I like that one. So that can support the mucosal layer. Then we have a few other options that we can do as well, okay, to directly deal with the leaky gut. We have got colostrum, right? Colostrum it's the first liquid that a mammal produces before they produce milk. So we use bovine colostrum. Now, colostrum is very powerful. It's high in IGF, which is insulin growth factor, so it can help rebuild and regrow those tight junctions and those cells that are struggling. It's also a source of immunoglobulins as well. It will help support cell turnover and is effective in the small intestine, which is obviously where most of the leaky gut happens. So colostrum, again, the dosing and the brand is going to be huge here. You want to make sure that it's from grass-fed cows, and also you can get raw colostrum if you're comfortable with that, but also low heated. You don't want it to be blasted with heat because then it loses a lot of its nutrients and minerals, in my opinion. Okay, something else that you could look into alongside this, or potentially you can replace one or the other, is BPC 157. I'm not going to talk too much about it because it's a peptide. I don't really want to recommend peptides. They are for people who are going from good to great. Obviously not FDA approved, many things like that. So if that's something that you want to do your own research on, then feel free to do it. I have done it myself. I've used the oral form. So if you do have any questions about it, I'm happy to ask. I did it when I was later in my journey, so I didn't see any significant effects from it, but I already mostly healed leaky gut. So it wasn't going to be a crazy drastic change for me anyway. So we've now got something to rebuild the cells in your small intestine. We've also got something to support the mucosal layer. And I would maybe double up on a third thing, which is sodium butyrate. Now, if you remember from earlier in the video, we talked about microbiome metabolites, and we talked about sodium butyrate being a short chain fatty acid that is the fuel for the colonic cells. And when your microbiome is struggling, you might not be able to produce enough of the short chain fatty acid, which can then contribute to leaky gut. So we can come in with the middleman and actually supplement with butyrate. Now, butyrate is naturally found in butter, but if we want enough to really heal leaky gut, it might be worth supplementing. But if you can get some grass-fed butter in as well, that would be a really, really good idea. Sodium butyrate is also amazing in terms of anti-inflammatory. It can signal mucosal repair as well, and is more effective, as effective in the large intestine. So for me, my leaky gut protocol usually combines sodium butyrate, colostrum, and things like slippery elm, and I think you'll be off to the races with something like that. Now, you're probably behind the screen and you're asking, Will, what about L-glutamine? Well, maybe you're not, I don't know. But L-glutamine tends to be the most popular option. Now, L-glutamine is amazing because it is the main fuel for your enterocytes, which is the cells in your small intestine, right? So great at repairing leaky gut. However, my only concern is that some people don't tolerate it very well. So in my head, the colostrum, sodium butyrate are great for the initial replenish and heal. And then after you've done that, implement L-glutamine, which is more so for maintenance. And after that acute inflammation has calmed down, and L-glutamine is more for long-term to support. And L-glutamine tends to be depleted more so when you are heavily active. So athletes, and I don't know, if you work out a lot, then I think L-glutamine would be great to supplement, which is something that I'm now doing more long-term, because obviously you don't want to be taking sodium butyrate and colostrum forever. And there are some studies that show that elevated levels of IGF for consistent amount of time might not be the most healthiest thing in the world. So I tend not to recommend to use colostrum for too long. So if you combine those, and also, I mean, there's a bunch of other things that we can go into in terms of the dysbiosis and the diet and the sleep and the stress and the upstream digestion, which I mentioned were the root causes of issues like that. This video would be too long, unfortunately. So that's essentially all you really need to know about leaky gut. It's actually pretty simple, to be honest. And I've kind of learned that, you know, we don't need to overcomplicate it for the average person, because you just need enough to learn to actually help yourself, and you just need a basic understanding to heal. And hopefully that makes sense. Any questions, do leave them down below. I might have missed a few things out. Maybe you can let me know if I missed anything out. I didn't want to make this video too long, because at the end of the day, it doesn't need to be. You don't need to know all the scientific jargon. You don't even need to know what zonulin is. You don't need to know about this. You can literally just have a basic understanding and address it for yourself and heal. You just need the absolute foundations. That's enough that the average person needs to in order to help themselves. And that's all you need. Again, any questions, let me know. If you want any other videos, let me know. Hopefully the background wasn't too annoying, because it is dark in London, so I couldn't use the other background, which is the windows. But yeah, until then, guys, appreciate you, and see you later.